All right. Now I've only got a little bit of background on Kurt, but I'll let Kurt introduce most of himself. Kurt is an Australian living in Sweden. So I don't know how long ago. Just about how long ago did you go? About 40 years ago? Did you go to Sweden?
No, we moved here full time 2012, Frank.
Well, so
Yeah.
that's all right. Yeah, so it's good. He's now, as you might have seen, in the traps that Kurt, has a reference collection of the Australian Commonwealth stamp from the kangaroo stamps right up to 1965, isn't it, Kurt?
Yeah, 66, just before decimalisation.
Just before decimalisation. Now, Kurt, approached me a few years ago that he wanted to do a presentation. I said yes, but he never got back to me. So don't know if I scared him off or he was too
No, you
busy
didn't
or what.
get me off. I just let's just say I got busy because I'm still working, but
Yeah, that's all right. That's
it
all right.
takes a while to get all this stuff put together, as you know.
That does, But no, but Kurt come and saw me at Boston, and we had this slot in July 3. So I said, why not? Put together something of what you something that you want to talk about, something that you like, and he's offered. He came back to me and he said he's going to do rare Commonwealth pre-decimal OS stamps. So, and I think I think you told me that these are some of your favourite stamps that you enjoy. So,
Yeah.
without any further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Kurt, and I'll start sharing the slideshow.
Thank you, Frank. No, so I guess the background for the collection is that I started when I was 10 years old, when my mum took me into what was then the Bank of New South Wales in Pymble, in Sydney, and I picked up these little pamphlets and I got hooked with that little fella on the right hand side looking through a magnifying glass, and I said to Mum, I need a magnifying glass, and it wasn't just to kill ants in the sun. I just was fascinated by looking at these things, and I got hooked, and I literally haven't stopped. I think the last stamp I bought for the collection was only a few years ago. So it's over 50 years, or it is bang on 50 years, to be honest, of putting this collection together. And the benchmark is the Stanley Gibbons catalogue of Australian stamps, the first Australian stamp, 1913, up to pre-decimal 1966. Every stamp that's catalogued was my goal and objective, and that includes the OSs. And the reason Frank suggested that I like the OSs more is because how quirky they were, in 1913. And the OSs, you all know that the OSs were issued, for government documents and for government organisations and marked official stamps. And the first Australian stamp, January 1913. That's when the OSs started with the large OS, and that's denominated as Type G or O1 or whichever you want to call it. And the interesting part about it was that this had this huge OS, and this is why I found it fascinating. So nobody was an expert; everyone was trying new things, and there weren't any computers involved, so it was all done by hand. And that's the part I found fascinating, that it was still a lovely story of the birth, really, of Australia. The large OS had 35 holes, the O had 18 holes, and the S had 17 holes. And if we go to the next slide, please, Frank. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to start with this, not because it's O1CW in the Stanley Gibbons catalogue, but because it has a sideways watermark, which only occurred when the blank paper was accidentally rotated 90 degrees before being fed into the printing press. So you can read the description underneath pretty clearly, I hope. Pretty rare. And the reason I love that stamp is not because it was a sideways watermark, and not because it's just a large OS on one of the first Australian stamps, but just because if you look at where the OS is actually punctured, what's the probability of an old lady working in a government organization in 1913 tearing that stamp apart away from the other stamp without ripping both stamps in half? So the fact that these large OS stamps existed and lasted and survived at all, especially on cover and then being taken off, it really is a miracle that these things survived. So that in particular has wonderful stories, and you can just imagine that the person who separated those stamps was obviously very, very careful, and obviously that they wouldn't have known it was a sideways watermark when used, but it survived. And it's you can see how rare they are in the description. I don't want to talk about how rare they are because all of these are rare. So I'll leave it at that. But if by the way, if you've got any questions, you can just chime in. But I just as a kid, when you learn about these things and why there was OS printed and why the big OS changed the small OS, and why they cut the amount of holes from the large OS to the small OS, and the reason was literally because these stamps were being destroyed before they were being used. And the other interesting anecdote is that a lot of these stamps were printed for government use, but of course stamps being a form of exchange, in 1913 people were taking stamps out of government organizations and going down to the local shop and literally buying bread and milk, and or going to the post office and cashing them in for cash, which wasn't theirs, it was the companies or the government's at the time. So in order to prevent all that, they marked them OS for official government use. If we go to the next slide, please. Yeah, another rarity. So 09W, a gorgeous color, albeit a little bit pale, but deep violet. And there's not too many of these guys left either. But if you go to the lifetime, if you go through the lifetime of the large OS, the first one was issued January 1913, but there was no more large OS punctuations from July 1914. So they barely lasted a year and a half, for all the reasons I described. So there's that one to me is just as you get up the denominations, you can imagine how expensive they are back in 1913 to even put on envelopes or put on parcels. But then parcels got heavier, and you can imagine with the outbreak of World War One, what happened to the denominations of Australian stamps and why they needed to upscale the price of all these stamps, given the weight of packages started to increase. Let's move on, please, Frank. Thank you. Yeah, 2 shilling. This is the reason this is a good one is because there's only 3 recorded, and I haven't seen another one or haven't read about another one, so I'm not sure where the others are. But when I found this one, it looked bright and shiny and happy to me. And then if you take another look at it, it's got the double print, and that's catalogued under Gibbons. But this is another classic fatal flaw when you get a double print in a large OS as early as that. And you can actually see, if you look at the bottom, there's a clear outline of the double frame at the bottom of the stamp. Registered Melbourne, which is pretty cool. And down the bottom, you'll see the note that one's held with the Royal Collection, leaving only 2 examples to collectors, and I haven't seen the other one. But once again, finding this one, it was a needle in a haystack, of course. But when they come up, you just go for it, and it's fun that this is part of the entire collection. And another rarity, of course, to survive. And I love it when they're used, because that human hands have touched them, and without really knowing and having a good look at the stamp with that magnifying glass, that it was a bit of a different stamp given its double print. Next one, please, Frank. Yeah, okay, up we go in the denominations. And yeah, this is a classic, most beautiful stamp. I think it speaks for itself. I think if you think about it, the first Australian stamps without King George V's head on them were a bit of a slap in the face to the king at the time. But the Kangaroo and Map series, and then the demand or the requirement for higher denominated stamps started to take off. And then to get one in that quality, I just thought was absolutely stunning. And it's a beautiful looking item. And you sort of look at it and you think, how did they come up with these beautiful colors? And I don't know how dark and gloomy it was back in those days, but of course, things weren't great. People were working their guts out, and this stamp, to go to the post office and buy a stamp like this, that must have been a beautiful thing to look at on a big sheet, I think. So I'm really, really proud that all these items survived in good nick, especially this one, because it's in wonderful example, a wonderful example of a very good looking stamp. All the perfs are perfect, and that selvage on the right hand side, I'm just, you can just see what that would have looked like on a big sheet back then. SGO 1-3. So if we move on, please, Frank, and up we go into SG 014, Gibbons 014. Yeah, I mean, look at that die 2 perforated large OS, lightly hinged original gum, typical irregular perfs. I can't even remember how beautiful that stamp was to buy when I bought it. When I found it, I think you just stare at it and you think, oh wow. So slightly off center, as I told you, it's all human. But you look at that stamp and you think, how did that survive? Why wasn't that used? Why was it stored? And it's just such a glorious color, brown and ultramarine. And I'm actually, as an Australian, you get very proud that you come up with these ideas. Back in 1913, and the country was taking off. I think it was just fantastic. Which brings me, of course, to one of the proudest items I've got. Frank, if you could please just go to the next slide. And this is on the front cover of my book that presents the entire collection, the Magnus collection. And this was my favorite stamp, and Frank alluded to it. And this stamp's got so many things going on with it. For a start, it's the highest denomination For a start, hardly anybody could afford to buy one of these stamps as an individual. These go on very, very large packages, more than likely sent overseas on very heavy parcels. And then you take another look at your stamp and you think to yourself, oh, how does SG015 exist? How is that? Why wasn't that ripped in half? And I actually had another one that was ripped, and I had it in the album next to it, just to show you why they got rid of these large OSs in such a short time. But for this to survive, it is a cracker. And then you take another look at the stamp, and God forbid that beautiful kangaroo's nowhere near the middle, is he? So you think, what a funny little quirky item that is to exist. And you can see there, public trust office cancellation on the upper left. Tiny perfs, not a lot wrong. You wouldn't argue. You'd overlook any perf problems and just stare at that kangaroo in the face, thinking, how did that happen? But there's a little tiny variety of a wonderfully rare item, and that's why I put that on the front page of the book, because it was very special. So this entire OS series, the large OS series, was completely discontinued July 1914, and all of the large OS stamps, just for you probably know this, of course, they were all and only first watermark, type 2, and the paper on all the large OSs was a clear horizontal mesh in those days. And because of the tearing, because of the destruction, prior to postage of these items, they got rid of this large OS and moved on to the small OS pretty much immediately. So if there's are there any questions on just that large OS type 01, type G section? No. Okay. So let's move on, Frank, to the small OSs, 037A. I'll let you just spend a little time reading that, but imagine if I told you that there's another double print in the OSs, and a lot of these items are too specific variety for Gibbons to list. However, it's my collection. I can make the judgment on what varieties and how beautiful the stamps go in, despite them not being in a catalogue. And I just thought that these types of things should be in there. You're going to see another one shortly, which is exactly what I'm talking about. So the small OS, large OS was 35 holes. The small OS only 23 holes. Type H. The O had 12 holes instead of 18, and the S had 11 holes instead of 17. In New South Wales state, there were 12 holes in the S, as another bit of a quirk. The probability of ripping that stamp, tearing it away from the other and posting it, collapsed from 70% down to only 10%. And that saved everybody a lot of time and money, and it was a great decision. And that's the reason that the OSs, which were discontinued completely in February 1933, the punctuation lasted until 1931. So you've got 16 years of this small OS, compared to just over a year of the large OS, which just shows you just how significant that change was in terms of Australian philately. So that's a cracking stamp. It does speak for itself. The description is extremely accurate, and it's a wonderful item to share with you guys. Next one, Frank, please. Yeah. Small OS, type O2, type H. Not 100% sure if anybody's seen this, and I'm not sure if you understood that I've been a very, very private collector. A lot of you I haven't met. I didn't even tell my friends that I collected stamps as a kid. I played cricket and footy and grew up on the northern beaches of Sydney, but I had this little private thing going, and to collect these type of stamps, I just, really, really proud that I got through all this. But this is a stamp that Gibbons again does not list in its catalogue, because it's a variety of a variety, if you like. But that is our very famous missing fraction, but with small OS, and it's a wonderful stamp. And the collection, of course, has the normal one without the OS punctuation. But I think the fact that this has a small OS perforation makes this stamp as, or if not more attractive to collectors, if not only the OS collectors, because there's not many of these guys running around. Brosnan White lists this stamp very accurately, and we're trying still to push Gibbons over to get this listed, only because it should be. It's such a relic, an iconic relic of Australian philately. Frank, the next slide, please. Yeah, so inverted watermark and broken leg. You've collected the broken legs, the two kangaroos broken leg. This is the higher denomination broken leg roo in a block of 4, perforated, small OS, inverted watermark the entire block. And that's pretty crazy, because that's putting the sheet in at 180 degrees wrong. And then a surviving mint block, which is absolutely gorgeous. And of course, that won't exist in the Gibbons catalogue either. So, to me, it's not a single item. It doesn't tick all the boxes of benchmarking against the Stanley Gibbons catalogue, but it's another wonderfully quirky little thing when you've got our famous broken leg kangaroo with an inverted watermark and perforated small OS. So lots of little things there. The next slide, please. Yeah, this is my fun page, because it's the set of all the denominations. I tend to do this in the book, in the whole collection, where I can gather and collect all the rarities in a run, and that means all the high denomination inverted watermarks, or the KG5 series high denomination inverted watermark OSs, and all that sort of stuff. I've got all that. But there's all 4 punctuated small OS and unused. 050, 051, 052, and 053, the high denominated OS. And just you can see the OSs are all, they're everywhere. That they were stamped, with some guy coming down on a machine and doing it themselves, and missing the top or missing the bottom and not getting in the center, you know, that didn't matter as long as it was perfed, as long as it was punctured. So, but there's the set. I just think it's a beautiful thing, you know, to look at. And again, I'll go back to those colors. And as a kid, that's what got me. You know, they were pieces of artwork. And to even think of coming up with bright, cheery, happy colors was terrific. But I just think that's a really, really cool page to talk about. They're all very rare items, and a lot of these haven't been seen. You know, this Zoom presentation I'm giving you, a lot of these items haven't been seen. But that was me being private, and now since Boston and meeting Jonas, I've gone public, and it's actually a lot of weight off my shoulders, and I'm really happy to start sharing all my stories, and I'm looking forward to meeting hopefully a lot of you in Brisbane. I'll be spending a few days there walking around and meeting people and stuff. So, but you know, if my passion is your passion, and we can share stories like that. Frank, next page, please. Yeah. Yeah. The only reason that's there is because it's, I would say, close to being never been seen before in that condition.
Your camera's gone, I think.
My camera?
Yes.
One
Can
second.
everyone see Kurt?
1 second, mate.
I can't see you. I can hear you, but I can't see you. Now I can. Yep. We're back.
Oh, sorry, Frank. Yep. Yep. Okay, so there's I think it's 0118A. I can't see the bottom anymore, but that's what it is. But it doesn't get more perfect than that, other than the fact that everybody would say, "Oh, Kurt, you know, it's not very well centered." But you know, try and find another one, you know, in that condition. And how crazy it is, because before I buy everything, I started counting all the holes. And unless you start at the top, you'll never be able to count all the holes properly. I promise you that much. It's a quirky thing. If we go to the next slide, please. Yeah, here we go. So into KG5 and punctured OS, perforated 13 by 12.5, variety watermark inverted. Hinge reinforced between stamp and selvage, typical yellowish gum, rich color, fine and appealing. Great rarity, only 2 recorded. Yeah. It sort of speaks for itself. You know, you'd expect this to be used, but it's not. And it's a beautiful, beautiful stamp as we move out of the kangaroo map series. Next slide, please, Frank. Yeah. Okay. So this is the printed OS that went, I think, between 31 and 33. I can check that, but that's what I think. They stopped in 30. They stopped in 33. But these are the printed ones, and you sort of think you think to yourself, why didn't they think of that before? But there's another one, inverted watermark, 0125W, Die 3, Queensland CDS, and in wonderful condition. And again, because of the inverted watermark, that makes these very, very difficult to find. And we all know that it's not real until Chris Saramuga has a look at it. So most of the most of the authentication I've got for the collection is either out of London or Chris for a lot of the rare items. Frank, next slide, please.
You keep on going in and out.
Yeah, I'm trying to watch it now.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll pop in and out. Sorry. So yeah, this is a friend we all love to meet, and God bless him. But this is a stamp I found fascinating. A lot of people wanted to argue this was a Teichbeisch. It absolutely is not a Teichbeisch. It was purposely re-put together, but of course it's got the inverted OS on the print, and I can't. Sorry about that, camera mate. But then if you can read that, I'll just let you read a little bit of that as to why they mended the sheet and why it's not a Teichbeisch. If it's mended before it gets issued, which is what happened, and not printed inverted against each other, it's not a Teichbeisch. But that's a beautiful example with full original gum. And is catalogued SG0128A. We're coming to the end, Frank. Next slide, please. Up.
Yep, that's the end.
Yep, perfect. Okay, well, we can leave that up, and you can
Yep.
read a little bit about what I've done. I'm really interested to hear your stories when I meet you in Brisbane. But essentially, this journey I've been on. I turn 60 next year, but the journey I've been on since I was 10 was all about putting this book together. And did I keep a secret from my wife? No, I was actually pretty open and honest. This was the quirky individual I was. Did I keep a secret from my mates? Yeah, because they'd probably punch me in the head and throw cricket balls at me. But that was just the way I was, and I'm really proud of this thing. I don't think anybody's put a collection like this as complete as I've got. I'm only missing, I think, God, Jonas, if you're on, do you remember how many stamps I'm missing?
I don't have that in front of me, no.
No, well, from memory, it's 23.
It depends on if we measure how many gaps there are following the Stanley Gibbons catalog. There are a little bit more than the Bruston White catalog because it's more specialized. So,
of course,
but we have explained. You have explained that in your book.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think it's 23 I'm missing out of the entire Gibbons thing, and I sort of know where 10 of them are, and I know that 10 of them I can't get.
But
so exactly. So anyway, it's pretty much all there, and the book will be. You can have a look at the book in Brisbane. I'm actually excited if you come up and see me. I can't wait to meet you, and I'll show you the book and And I know, Frank, you're going to be there, so I'm very much looking forward to
Um,
seeing you and having a glass of red
Now,
wine.
Jonas, if you want do a bit of marketing, I'll allow you to do that.
Well, thank you very much. Like Kurt already have said, I will be in Australia for the Brisbane show, and we bring the book Kurt has mentioned. The book Kurt mentioned is the book we have prepared for the sale of his collection in Zurich later this year. So we can talk more there in Brisbane.
Have you got dates for the November sale? I think is it November?
We don't know yet exact which date, but the sale week is 23rd to 28th of November, where Kurt's collection will be sold, most likely one of the first 2 days, as we used to start with British Commonwealth and A for Australia first.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Any questions from anybody? I'll stop sharing, and then we can see everybody. Anyone got any questions?
No.
Please. Any comments?
Nice.
Try again.
Thanks, Brian.
Just to make Kurt slightly jealous, of course, I had the honour of looking after the Queen's collection, and there are very nice blocks of 4 of all the high values of the first issue perforated OS in there, as Jeff will confirm.
Hi, Kurt. Beautiful, beautiful stamps. Do you know who did the OS perforating? Was it done at the Note and Stamp printing branch, which I think, as I remember, at that time of the Australian history, was on the wrong end of Flinders Street? Was it done by the Note and Stamp printing branch, or was it done outside contractor?
No, I think you're 100% right. It was Victoria. And I don't think it was an outside contractor.
Okay.
And the stories I get, you're talking about first watermark?
Yeah, well, 1913 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it was Victoria.
Yeah.
And I just, it's funny you asked that, but I'm a bit of a sponge when it comes to people who tell me information. I never say I know that. I don't like using that terminology. Because I don't know everything. And even if I know something, I want to know somebody else's opinion of the information they got. I love listening to the stories about our stamps and Australian stamps. But the stories I hear out of Victoria are always strong, and the Victorian philatelists I do meet, they do have wonderful stories. But I think, not to say that Victorians didn't make most mistakes. I just think that you got to put yourself in the position of being in that industry, working with the First Australia Post, representing the country. It's a hell of a job, but you've got to produce a lot of stamps, and you've got to do it in quick time, and you're going to make errors. And even though there's 2 or 3 blokes checking your work, we're not all perfect, and there's probably a footy game on. So they had other things to do.
Any other comments or questions?
Can you hear me, Frank?
Yes, we can hear you, Jeff.
Oh, good. Can I just mention there are 3 OS overprints of Australia that don't exist at all. When the stamp printer made a printing and he put all the substandard sheets to the side to convert to OS stamps, either by puncture or overprint, he just did that without having to be told. He just did it as a matter of course. And at some stage in 1932, the post office found out that the Frippany King George V overprinted OS existed and they didn't know about it. So they asked the printer to let them know what was going on, and it transpired that the printer also had in stock, though hadn't issued any, of the 9-penny Kangaroo, the 1 and 4-penny George V, and the 1936 6-penny Kookaburra, all overprinted OS. And the post office asked, well, don't issue any and destroy them all. And they destroyed them all. Every one of them. The post office doesn't have examples.
Please.
That's a really cool story. I love that.
And I assume they're not listed in Gibbons.
And I'm pretty sure there aren't. I'm pretty sure there aren't copies.
Maybe there's 20. Maybe there's 20. Yeah, is only missing because the other 3 don't exist.
No, they're not in Gibbons. They're not in Gibbons.
And there aren't copies in the Royal Collection either.
No.
No, they destroyed every one of them.
That's
the
amazing.
records, they destroyed every single stamp.
What was interesting is that your block of 4 perforated OS, because we've had quite a lot of discussions about this, and it appears that the Commonwealth stamps were perforated with a horizontal bar of OS, so they did each horizontal row individually, whereas the previous stamps for Victoria were all perforated vertically with a vertical bar. No idea why they changed it round, but
Interesting. I never knew that.
No.
so if you look at your block of 4, that explains why the OS is high on one and low on the other, because of course, if it's done horizontally, that can
That's
happen.
right.
Whereas I have, I think, a pair of 4-penny postage of Victoria, which has got a horizontal pair. The left-hand side is single OS, and the right-hand one is double perforated OS.
Yeah.
So that was done vertically. So the whole of the second stamps, the whole column was perforated twice.
Any more comments or questions of Kurt?
No, I just checked, and I think that's the last OS I had was the Kingsford Smiths.
Yeah.
That's a really great story. Thank you.
It is. It's a good story. I never knew about that.
My point entirely. That's beautiful. Thank you.
No more questions or comments? If then,
Thank you.
Oh yeah, look, Kurt, I think that was magnificent. Thank you for sharing your favourite OS stamps. I think that was really, especially seeing one of some of one I've only known, and others of there's only 4 or 5 known. I like that block of 4 with the fractured, the broken leg. I reckon that's a cracker.
It's a lovely one. Thank you. Yeah.
And I like the way you've collected, because what I see in there is you've got the OS stamp, the perforated stamp, but you haven't just gone for the common variety. You've gone for the common stamp. You've gone for the varieties, which is I reckon is brilliant. It's like I say to every exhibitor: look outside the square. Don't just present the common stuff. Present something that's outside the square, and you've gone outside the square in your collecting and your reference material, and I congratulate you on that. I think it's fantastic. And
Thank
on
you,
behalf of the Royal Society of Victoria, I thank you for doing the presentation tonight. And I think the people who haven't come to view it, I think they really missed out, because I think it's fantastic. And I hope you have a successful auction later on in this year, and it goes well for you and Coron Fila, and thank you. So on behalf of us, I'd like to thank you. Yes, Ted. You're muted.
You're muted.
Ted.
Unmute. Yeah. Normally, as usual, we give presenters a plaquette to thank them for the presentation. And Frank, I'll get this to you next week, and if you could take it to Brisbane.
I will take it to Brisbane. Yes. And I'll present it to Kurt.
That's really cool. Thank you so much.
You're one of the very few who's got the new one.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks, Ted.
Frank,
Can
I make one other comment, Frank?
Yes, sure.
You put yourself
As
on
Kurt
mute.
inferred, I think the first watersheds, large or small OS, are basically the rarest basic stamps of Australia. and I've kept records of them over a very long period. And his your £2 cancelled with the public officers. I know of 3 copies only. 3 copies of the stamp. I think one of those copies I know is
you're going in and out.
Belongs on the left-hand side of your. Yeah, I'm sorry. It doesn't say I'm unmuted. Did you hear any of it?
Oh, half, I think.
Half of it.
I'm sorry. I'll have a talk to you in Brisbane.
Yeah.
I was going to ask
But
Jeff a
Frank,
question,
I need to get on a plane now to hear this story.
Yeah, I know. I want to hear it.
Jeff, I have to hear the story.
If you can hear me, I was saying,
yeah.
I believe I have an illustration of a £2 large OS puncture that is the left-hand stamp of your stamp. It was originally a pair.
Oh, there you go.
My God. Where is that stamp?
I know where it used to be. I've got no idea where it is now. No.
Wow, I'd love to have a look at the illustration, please. If you can bring it to Brisbane, I'd really appreciate that.
I'll have my computer with me. It'll be there. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Frank, if I may, I was going to ask Jeff, because I've never thought about this before. How were the printed OSs undertaken on sheets, Jeff? Were they also done in single lines, or were they done as a complete sheet?
Oh, no, they were a plate of 120.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, I think for the George Fives, they were a double plate of 240. I think.
That was a big undertaking for relatively few sheets that were that printed.
Oh, the penny and twopenny George Five, you'd find there was big quantities done.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was for the government, so who cares?
For the government, by the government.
But once they started overprinting, of course, that was the end of it, because then Philatelist got very keen on them and started finding ways of spiriting mint stamps out of government departments.
They became worth even more than face value.
There should be no mint copies of any of these at all. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, exactly. There shouldn't be.
Same story with the GP departmental overprints. They were never supposed to exist mint either.
Yep.
And people got into big trouble for those.
Other than the king.
Other than the king.
Yeah, that's right. Any more comments?
Very much looking forward to meeting you, and now I'm very excited. And I actually meant what I said, you know. I mean, even though it's summer and we've pretty much got 23 hours of sunlight here in Stockholm, I'm very, very much looking forward to getting on a plane and getting into Brisbane.
Okay, any more comments or questions?
No.
Not, I'll stop recording.